Hello guys and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Ademola Badmos, and if this is your first time, do not forget to like and subscribe and share, especially if you find this video helpful. So in the previous video, we've already created a problem, a challenge for ourselves, and the challenge is we are looking for a way to avoid reference instantiating our Chrome driver 4 times. We just want to instantiate it once and get it done with. So how do we now do this? We try to do this way, but the only problem we have is that it's only working for the first method in the group, in the class. So the next thing that we need to do now is find a way to make sure that this can work for us. So since it only works for one method, what if we create just a method that it will work for? A method where it would be able to launch the driver without issues. Then that way it would work, right? But when we do that, then how do we now reference that method in our code all the time without having to write it 4 times? Because if we create a method right now, let's say we create this public static void, no, not static, just public void. Let's say we create this and call it start session, which makes sense because it will be starting each of our test session for us, right? And we put this there because this will do that. It will launch the browser. It will launch the browser and the URL for us. All right. So, which means we have a method to do this. But how do we now get this method to work without having to reference it inside each of the methods? We can equally say, okay, after starting each session, we should have a method that would also end the session for us. So we can have a public, we can have a public void terminate session, which would mean that for every time the test is done, let me cut this away. For every time the test is done, there should be a method that would close it. So our issue now is we have these methods. Definitely this method, the start session, will work. We'll be able to pick this driver. But how then do we now save that session to be able to work with the other tests? We do not need this anymore now. We don't need to repeat this anymore. And also the quit browser, we don't need to repeat it 4 times. So what we have been able to do at this moment, as of this moment, we've been able to create 2 additional methods that will do that will serve a different purpose for us, right? And we still have 4 existing methods that will do 4 different things. They will log in on different permissions. So at this point, in order to make this work for us, we would introduce a proper test annotation by going into our test source file, right? We go there, go into Java, create a package as usual, and create a class file. And in that class file, we will reference this public class. And with the use of annotations, we will begin to manipulate this. So by so saying, we don't need this main method at this point. We can remove it. So we have 4 methods that can help us log in as a admin user, manager user, teacher, or student. And we have 2 methods that can help us start and stop the test. So in order to test this concept, let us begin. I have explained what I'm trying to do. I will create a package, right? And call it, let's say, first test, right? Let's just call it first test. And inside it, I will create a Java class. And in this, let's call this class the user types. A class starts with capital user types. All right. So we've created that. So in this class, what we just need to do is we need to instantiate first. So we bring first in. Yeah, we've brought first in, and let's instantiate it into a variable. First equals new first. All right. So now that we have this, how do we begin to get things inside it? Of course, we can easily say, we can easily just create a method here and say, let's call this public void login as admin, right? And in this, we can have first, right? And this one will be admin login, right? But this won't work because we already established that for a typical Java class file to work, it needs a main method. But if we've already established here that with what we have constructed, a main method will be difficult to use at this point, right? As you can see, the admin login is highlighted because it has been referenced here, right? So what do we now do? Because it will be difficult for us to be able to reuse these two methods if you are going to use it in the main method. That is where annotations comes in, because annotations allow us to arrange our tests properly. So if I come here and say at test, as you can see, it's already telling me where I can get that from. So I can pick this option and have this, right? With this right now, I can try to run this test. Can you see? But if I try to run this, I'll have an error because I do not have the method that will help me start the session. Remember that inside login right now, login is just ready to perform the login action. But the login needs to do this on a Windows, on a launch browser on the correct URL. So for that to work, all I just need to do is create an additional method. Call that, let's call this public void setup. Let's call this setup. So inside setup, I will call the start session method. So as you can see, I have the start session method in it. With this, will it run? I seriously doubt it. So I'm going to try to run it so we'll see the result. Yeah. As you can see, there was an error. It did not run. Okay? Because this is the only one it recognized. So it's because of the annotation added to it, that's why it's able to run, and it's only trying to run this particular method. So what do we do? If we add a before test here, it means before this test runs, the setup file will run first. So that way we'll be able to get something to work. So let's try to run it this time around. and see if it will work. Obviously, it should work because the first thing that will run will be the setup before the login method runs. So what that means is that with a before test, before any of the tests in your class file, before any of it, mark the word, remember it, before any of the test runs, that particular code block, that particular method will run first. The method that has a before test annotation would run first. Yep, it's about to set it up. Let me remove this. Forgive, my system is becoming a bit slow. As you can see, it is working now. Yeah, it has loaded this and it is logging in. So it means that it would run the admin test only if the before test runs first, and the before test has helped us to launch the page. So it has executed successfully, but as you can see, it did not close. Why it didn't close is simple, because we did not have the method that would help us close it, like we have stated here, the terminate session. So in order to bring the terminate session in, we can easily just do this. Public, let's call this tear down. By convention, this is a good name because one is setting up and one is tearing down the session. So here we can have first dot terminate session. But this won't work, like we've already established when we tried setup, without an annotation of its own. So we are going to add an after test, because an after test will run would only run after the old test has been executed successfully. It will not run in between it. It will run after all the tests have executed successfully. So if we test this right now, we should be able to see it launch the page and close successfully. Let me exit the one that we opened before so we don't confuse it. So while it is building, let's check. Yeah, it's building, so it's working. Yeah, it's done building and it's going to load up for us. Yes, so this time around we expect it to launch the browser, log in as an admin, then when it is done, it should close the browser successfully. Yes, yes, good. Now that we've been able to address that problem, we've been able to implement a full page object modeling. Our page object for the login is here, is on this particular file, while the test class is somewhere else. But let us introduce a new problem that we'll finish on, well, that we'll address in the next video, right? Let us add another test here. Let's add another test here. So this test, let's call it, let's do that of manager. So let's say public void login as manager, right? Now this shouldn't be an issue, right? But you will see the issue that we would have just now. Just wait for it. Manager login. Here we are. So let's try to log this. Let's try to run this. Now, the thing you will first notice is it is going to run admin first. It's going to run admin first, not because admin is the first method that we created. It is going to run admin first because it runs alphabetically. So now you can see login as. A comes before M, so admin will be executed first. Expectedly after admin, it won't be able to run again. I will tell you the reason, and after I tell you the reason, in the next video we will solve it. Then in the next video again, we'll look at how we can decide which of the tests will run first. Okay, so let's run this and let us see it fail. As you can see, it worked for an admin manager, but it failed. An admin user, but it failed for a manager. This is the reason. The reason is because of our annotation. Our annotation will run before all the tests, before any of the tests runs. So our setup has only been able to execute itself once. It will not execute itself again. So when it executes itself successfully the first time, the admin test was able to run. But because it didn't execute itself again, the login manager could not get the username field and password field. So that's why it failed. So in the next video, we will talk about how to resolve that using the same annotation, using the appropriate annotation. Then we'll also talk about how to define our tests. So in the next video, when we talk about using the right annotation and when we fix it, we'll put all the other 4 tests, we'll put the remaining 2 tests into this, and we'll now dictate how it will run. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.